In this video, we will be looking at how to run a one-variable analysis in a basic scientific calculator like the TI-30X2S model. So we have a data set, and we want to compute the mean, median, mode, range, standard deviation, as well as a 5-number summary using this calculator. Let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we will need to put our calculator in stat mode. If we want to start entering data, then what we're normally going to do is we're going to hit the data button. However, if you're not in stat mode, you will get a stat error. So to fix this, let me hit clear, and I need to go into stat mode, which is this blue text right above the data button. I'm going to hit second, and then I'm going to hit data. Now we should see options. Are we interested in computing a one-variable statistic or a two-variable statistic? I'm going to hit enter on one variable. Notice that we have this little text up here that says stat now, so we are ready to go. If I hit data again, now that I'm in stat mode, I can start entering my data. So I'm going to type in 35, and then I'll hit the down arrow, and they're going to ask me what is the frequency of that item. So basically asking how many times does 35 show up in this list. It only shows up one time, so I'm just going to hit the down arrow again. Now I'll type in my second number, which is 70, hit the down arrow twice. I can type in my third item. I'm going to continue in this manner up until I reach the number 38. So my third item was 31, down twice, 37, down, 65, down. When you type in 38, you have two options. You can either type in 38 twice, because we see it twice in the list, or when you hit the down arrow and you see the frequency, we could type a 2 here to indicate that I have two iterations of this data value in my list. I find that most students typically ignore the frequency option. If you just leave this as a 1, then you can type in 38 again as your 7th item, and the calculator understands what you mean. You had 38 2 times in the calculator. Okay, moving on, we have 44, 43. I almost typed this in as my frequency. That would be a mistake. My 9th item is 43, down twice, 43 again, down twice, 68, and I can just hit enter at this point. So now that I've entered my data in the list, I can hit the stat VAR button. It's going to calculate a one-variable statistic. The first thing that you should double check is that n is equal to 11. N is the number of data values you just typed in. So I can count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 items. If you made a mistake like I almost did, where I didn't hit the down arrow twice, and you enter a number as the frequency of a corresponding number, this n value is going to be out of whack. So if it actually says the number of items that we were expecting to have entered, it is unlikely that I've made a data entry error so far. If you did want to double check the data that you've typed in, I can just hit data again, and all of it should be in there, so I can go through the list and verify any of the items that I just put in. Okay, but let me go back to the stat VAR mode. N is the number of items that we've entered. X bar is your mean. So X bar in this case would be 46.55. SX is your sample standard deviation. SX, in this case, 14.12. Sigma X is your population standard deviation, which is 13.47. All right, let me write these words down. This would only be if you were looking at a sample, and this would only be if you were looking at a population. Based on the question or the context of the problem, it should be clear if we want to use a sample or a population standard deviation. These numbers will not both be correct. In Math 125, it is most we most commonly assume that we are working with a sample. So it's pretty rare that we'll report a population standard deviation. If though, of course, if the problem context said that these are all of the items in an entire population, then we would have used the population standard deviation instead. Continuing on, if I hit the right arrow, we see sigma x, capital sigma x. This just means I'm adding all of the x values together, so that's what you would get if you add all of these together. And the following item is the sum of x squared, so if you square each of these items and add them together, that's what we would get. This is useful in some math classes, might reference this. Math 125, this can safely be ignored. And that's all there is to this basic scientific calculator. So they're not going to compute other items for us. If you want to compute median, you will have to do this by hand. Let me pause the video, and I'm going to rewrite this list in an ordered manner. All right, now that all of the numbers are in order, the median is just the middle number in my list, so we can count towards the middle. So we have the two outside pieces, we move one in again, continue on in this manner. And then if you have one value that's exactly in the middle, that is the median, that's 43. This also happens to be part of your 5-number summary, so we'll reference that when we get down there. If, though, there were two numbers that were equally in the middle, then what we would do is we would just average the two things together. The mode we also have to compute by inspection. Which item appears most frequently in the list? There are two items that appear twice, so they're both tied for the value that occurs most frequently, and we see that 38 and 43 both have that value. So we would say here that our data is bimodal. Moving on, we can compute the range. The range is simply the minimum value subtracted from the maximum value, so 70 minus 31. If I go to my calculator, clear this out, 70 minus 31, we should see that 39 is the range. The 5-number summary lists the minimum, which we've already said is 31. It lists the maximum, which is 70. The second quartile is the middle of our data set, so that's the median. And then the first quartile would be like the median of the first half of our data. So ignoring the, let me get this back on the screen. So ignoring the median, you would look at the first half of your data and try to find its median. Let me see if I can do this in another color just to emphasize. So looking from here to here, this is the data I'm considering for my first quartile. We have the two outside pieces, we start counting in, and we see that 37 is in the first quartile place. And then over on the right, we have data that should be considered for the second quartile, and as we count towards the middle, we see 65 is that middle value. Again, I'm sorry, this was the third quartile. Your second quartile is the median. So one more time, when you are computing this third quartile, it is the median of the second half of the data set. You're ignoring the actual median of the data. So in this instance, you were considering 5 data points and just trying to find the middle value. All right, there's one more tip I would like to give you about using this calculator. Let's suppose I move on to another problem and I want to get rid of my data list. If I hit data, I see all of the numbers that I just entered into the calculator. Let's go to the stat mode again. So I'm going to hit second and data, and I am going to scroll over to the right until I see an option to clear data. If you hit enter here, now my list should be cleared up. So if I hit data again, we see that I don't have the previous problem, and I could start entering in this new list. All right, I hope this helps as you are computing one variable statistics in Math 125.